And good evening and welcome to Jerusalem Dispatch ICEJ UK Live. This is a reminder that the International Christian Embassy at Jerusalem UK brings you a closer connection to Israel and the Jewish people through this ministry. And in tonight's program, we have a very special guest. Her name is Vivien Churney, and she's an author. And we'll be talking about her latest novel, which really reflects her mother's story of defying the Nazis, of actually surviving the Holocaust, but not only that, but also rescuing Jewish children and getting them to safety. So we'll be hearing about Vivien's incredible life, but also that of her mother. And also we're doing this program in reflection of Tuesday, because on Tuesday in Israel, it was Yom Hashoah. This is the International Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel, where the Jewish people and the Israelis remember those precious 6 million lives that were murdered on an industrial scale by the Nazis. And so I'm going to hand you over now to Dr. David Elms to pray for tonight's proceedings, but also to just give us an update on the ministry that is ICEJ UK.
Thank you, Simon. And indeed, I'm looking forward very much to tonight's session. I've already met Vivien and very impressed. So I know that we're in for a real blessing tonight. But maybe I can just give a little bit of an overview of what we've been doing in the UK with the International Christian Embassy. In fact, this Friday, we have our Rosh Chodesh prayer. And again, this is online and this is worldwide. It starts from the rising of the sun and it goes down to the setting of the same. Many countries involved. And tonight, we've actually got Karen and Gordon with us as well. You'll be hearing from them a little bit later. And they are the prayer coordinators. And for those in the UK, you can join us this Friday. We'll give you the time a little bit later on. Now, next month, at the start of the month, about the 8th of May, we have the International Leaders Conference in Jerusalem. And for that, again, we have leaders from many nations. We've got 90 nations involved in the ministry. Many of the leaders in those countries will be gathering in Jerusalem for training session and for us to review what has happened in Israel in the past year and to prepare for this coming year. But for us, again, in the UK, on the 20th of May, we have Peter Sukahiro coming over. Peter is known to many of you, a well-known international teacher. He's coming down to Southampton on the Saturday, the 20th. Then he's coming up to the Midlands, and also we'll be going to Buxton, then moving on to our branch in Ireland. So it's quite a busy month ahead of us. We're looking forward to that. But tonight, of course, the focus is on our International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So I'd just like to pray for this gathering, if you would just join with me. And we thank you, Lord God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who never changes, but Lord, the one who wants us to change. We pray tonight, Lord, that by your Spirit, your Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of the living God, that you will be present in this meeting, and that, Lord, we will leave here, Lord, leave this session thinking of a truth. God was in our midst, speaking to us, teaching us and leading us. And so we commit everything to you, and we pray this in the name that is above every name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, David. And we've got a very good video to go to now that's produced by ICEJ in Jerusalem. And this just shows us what happens during a Yom Hashoah, when the whole nation of Israel comes to a standstill at 10 o'clock for 2 minutes. And what we see is some of Israel's big highways, whether in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, they just come to a complete stop as the whole nation observe the silence for the horrors of the Holocaust that happened over 80 years ago. Let's have a look. And I don't know other nation that comes to a complete stop like Israel does to remember the Holocaust on Yom Hashoah. And that's why even today, the Holocaust casts a dark shadow over the Jewish people. And that's why it's imperative as Christians that we speak up against the evils of anti-Semitism and remember what happened to our Jewish brothers and sisters over 80 years ago. David, would you just share with us a little bit why, as Christians, it's so important that we educate Christians about the Holocaust, to speak up against anti-Semitism, but also to bless and help the remaining Holocaust survivors?
Yes, indeed, Simon. And of course, this would take a long time, so I'll try and be brief. By the end of this evening session, people will be illuminated much further. But I would just like to say at this particular point that we have to remember this is not a primitive historical event by primitive people of long ago who were just cruel and wicked, and since then mankind has grown up. The biggest shock of all was that this was an advanced, so-called civilized nation that just turned in a moment. And I think the shock of it was that people began to realize what wickedness lies in the hearts of people. And of course, for us as Christians and the Jewish people as well, we have this, the Yetzer Hara, the evil pull within mankind. And so to me, we've got to constantly be aware and vigilant. People need to realize how easy it is to slip into wrong ways. And we as believing people need to be vigilant in faith, in prayer, and in action. And again, for us within the ICEJ, we take everyone to the Holocaust survivors' home as often as we can. We obviously help it practically, and we help by telling people, taking them there and going back to their own countries to telling them what is happening. And also, we were founders of the Christian desk at Yad Vashem. And over the years, many Christians who've been to Yad Vashem, deeply moved, deeply almost traumatized. Words can't express the absolute depths and the horrors of it, but have left changed people. And so we need to be constantly remembering, so that maybe for the future that things will be different. That, of course, is our prayer.
Thank you, David. Well said. So let's have a look now at what ICEJ does for what is known in Israel as Yom Hashoah, but also the home for Holocaust survivors, by giving them that practical love and support that they absolutely deserve. So let's have a look at this.
It's Holocaust Memorial Day today. It's a heavy day, it's a difficult day, and at 10 o'clock all of Israel stopped in order to remember the 6 million Jewish people that perished during the Holocaust. Here in Haifa we have a ceremony, and at the ceremony we have people from the government, members of Knesset, all kinds of dignitaries, but besides that also our young soldiers and policemen that come here to remember and to stand with these Holocaust survivors at this very difficult day. We would love to give you a little taste of what it is to remember.
התכנסנו כאן ברחבת יד לניצול בחיפה כדי לחזור ולשנן את המשפט לעולם לא נשכח, לעולם לא נסלח. אנו עומדים כאן במקום שבו הקים מייסד העמותה מר שמעון סבג את עמותת יד עזר לחבר, שהיא בית חם לניצולי שואה, ל100 ניצולי שואה, כ100 ניצולי שואה שמתגוררים כאן עם מיטב התנאים ומברכים על המקום.
התכנסנו שוב פה היום לזכר כל אלה שנשפו בשואה, ותודה לאל שנוכל לכבוד את זה הפעם ביחד, היום הקשה הזה. אני יודעת שאתם, ניצולי השואה היקרים, שאתם כבר הדליקו את הנרות שלכם, נרות זיכרון אתמול בערב, ושהיום הזה זה יום קשה, והאובדן והכאב העמוק, שזה לא רק היום, אבל זה כל הזמן איתכם. אני רוצה לחבק אתכם ולחזק אתכם.
After the ceremony, we had a wonderful opportunity to sit with two of our survivors and with some of those beautiful soldiers and to ask them what this day actually means to them, what it means for them to remember and why it's important. למה בשבילך יום השואה חשוב?
בגלל שיש לנו מדינה, איפה נלך אנחנו? אנחנו צריכים לשמור על מעט שיש לנו, אנחנו לא הרבה, ועוד הולכים, ונהרגים חיילים, ותאונות דרכים, ואנשים מבוגרים, וכל פעם פחות, פחות, פחות. עכשיו, אם הצעירים לא יאמינו, אז הם ילכו מצד אחר, אז מה נשאר? כלום.
מתי אתם חושבים בעצם זה חשוב להיות פה היום ביום השואה? למה זה חשוב בשבילכם?
קודם כל, אני וזוהר, זוהר היא החיילת שלי. אנחנו פעם ראשונה נמצאות פה. אני חווה את יום השואה כבר 3 שנים בצבא, זוהר פעם ראשונה. ואני מרגישה שיש לי, נפלה בחלקי הזכות מאוד מאוד גדולה להגיע לפה היום. לא ידעתי על קיומו של המקום הזה, יש לציין. אני גרה בחיפה, בסביבה, ולא ידעתי שזה קיים. אז קודם כל, ברגע שאני יודעת, ואני שלחתי למשפחה שלי, והמשפחה שלי שלחה לחברים, אז קודם כל ככה כולנו, כל המעגל הזה הגדול שהוא רק מתעצם ומתעצם, יודע על המקום הזה ויכול להגיע לפה. בין אם זה להגיד שלום, ובין אם זה לשוחח, אפילו 5 דקות, זה מצווה, זה מצווה. כי פשוט אסור לנו לא לשכוח, תמיד לציין ותמיד להגיע לפה ולכל הארץ בכלל. כמו נעמי יש עוד, וצריך להנציח כל רגע ורגע בחיים האלה כשהם פה.
I so want to thank all of you out there for your wonderful help so that we can do the work that we do here in Haifa with Holocaust survivors. It's only because of you that we can do it. And I want to tell you, please remember what happened so that we can learn from the past and we can really build together, Jews and Christians, a much better future. Thank you.
And ICEJ do an incredible job in helping Holocaust survivors, having a home for them, caring for them, loving them. And there's nothing more special than giving the survivors the respect that they deserve after the horrors of what they went through. And they are very, very special people. And we got to honor them and we got to bless them. And this is what this ministry is doing. David, would you just kindly read out Vivien Churney's biography before we invite Karen to say a few words?
Yes, certainly. Well, Vivien is an author, a poet, an artist, and she resides in Liverpool, where I reside. She has a master's degree in Victorian literature from Liverpool University. Having taught English to many students, Vivien has enjoyed communicating her passion for the subject and has inspired others to pursue their love of literature. She is now the author of a novel called Bound by the Scars We Share. That was inspired by her Jewish mother during the Second World War, as she spent 5 years trying to escape from the Nazis. She also helped Jewish children escape from the Nazis in occupied France and Switzerland.
Thank you. And it's thanks to Karen that we have Vivien on today. So Karen, can you just share a little bit about how you met Vivien at the town hall in Liverpool to mark International Holocaust Memorial Day, and also something about her book that you've read, which is Bound by the Scars We Share?
Thanks, Simon. We made arrangements to go to the first Holocaust Memorial Day, which was in Liverpool, and that was Unite Against Fascism, and Vivien spoke then. And it was just really good to reconnect with the Jewish community because we hadn't had a memorial evening for a few years due to lockdown. And then we were kindly invited to go to the Holocaust Memorial service at the town hall with David and my husband Gordon, and we were just overwhelmed with the reception and the love and the support that the council in Liverpool, the city council, put on this wonderful service for the Holocaust Memorial Day. And Vivien spoke again at that event, and we really wanted to reconnect with our Jewish brethren in Liverpool, so we we went to Vivien and gave her a small book that's been written by the ICEJ called The Forgotten Righteous, which details of the Gentile individuals who helped our Jewish brothers and sisters during the Holocaust and World War II. So, and it really spoke to me, her book, because I do like to read, and testimonies and books, you know, easier reads rather than deep theology is my key. So I bought the book and read it, and I won't give away the ending, but it just wasn't, it was such an unexpected ending, but a beautiful ending, really was. And but there was a couple of things that I highlighted, and one of the things that was said at the beginning of the book is when her grandparents were in Poland, and it said the Jews began to endure persecution from the Polish authorities. And they knew, Zara and Smuley knew that life as Jews in Poland could no longer be an option. And they said, we have to leave for all our sakes. We are being persecuted for just being Jewish. We do not harm anyone, yet we are hated. And that's what I heard when we were at the Holocaust Memorial Day, that same sentiment, and it's still there. The question was asked of us, why people hate us so much, and that hatred will never go away. So it was quite shocking to have it reiterated within Vivien's book, and I do pray that we can, as Christians, move forward and help our Jewish brethren. The other thing is, have I got a problem with my sound, or is it?
No, no, it's fine. It's a little echoey, but it's fine.
It's okay. So the other thing that I read from your mum, Vivien, she said the guilt of surviving had never left her, and it seemed now that no one really cared about her abysmal life during the war and her family's personal Holocaust. That when she came to Liverpool, nobody really understood what she'd gone through, because in Liverpool, although we'd had bombings, we hadn't had the persecution that our brethren had had. And I also thought, again, for the future now, it's something for us all to be aware of when people are coming from different countries who've left persecution behind, that although they physically may have left it, mentally, it's still there. And I've just got another thing that she said was, living in the provinces where no one understood the extreme persecution she'd been through, so she found great difficulty in relating to other housewives in her neighbourhood. She felt that somehow people blanked the fact that so many Jews had been sent to death camps or had their lives stolen from them while having to run away from persecution. So again, we just do hope that we can stand with our Jewish people and our Jewish brethren, Vivien, and hope from today that we'll be able to move forward and make much more connections within the community up here in Liverpool and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for what you do. And thank you for reaching out to Vivien. So our special guest for this month's Jerusalem Dispatch Live is Vivien Churney, and she is an author as well as an English teacher. So thank you so much for telling your mother's story in a novel. And I think it's so important that as many stories of that period of world history are told to keep the memory alive. And of course, we're now at a stage where we're seeing that there are very, very few survivors left. There are very, very few personal accounts. So the fact that you are telling your mother's story is so important to keep that memory alive of the horrors of what happens when you allow anti-Semitism to take root and destroy society. And what happens to the Jewish people never finishes with the Jewish people, as we saw during the Second World War. So, Vivien, it's an absolute pleasure that you're joining us tonight. Can you just share a little bit about your Jewish background growing up in London, and your passion for literature and poetry?
Okay, well, I grew up in Liverpool with my mother and father and my brothers and my sister, and my father was a doctor in Liverpool, and my mother eventually became a language teacher because she spoke 5 languages. And we had a great upbringing. Our parents were very keen on our education. I think that's why I began to, they both were very well read. And I think that's why I started to read a lot and developed a love of literature, which I eventually studied, as well as art, which I also studied. And I found that by reading literature, I could travel around the world, really, and hear and read about people's lives and feelings. And I think that's what literature does for people. And also, I've written a lot of poetry, particularly for my family, marking special occasions, and really that's a book that might be in the making at the moment, where it's a history of a life in poetry. So yeah.
Amazing. And Vivien, would you just share with us, what is it like growing up, knowing your mother's a Holocaust survivor, and the challenges that you faced with your mother, as we will later find out when during the course of this interview, more of the details. But what was it like growing up, knowing what your mother went through during the Holocaust? And
I think that it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy in terms of her experiences, because she would tell us bits about her life, but we got it in fragments, and I often wrote those fragments down. And she was very much a very sort of strong woman, and she was she had a terrific sense of humor, and yet behind that was her secret. And as I grew older, she started to tell me more. And so I found it very, very difficult to hear what she had to say. I think we all did in the family. And it was painful for us. And I think children of Holocaust victims all feel very much the same, because they want to know, but their parents don't want them to know, because it was so horrific. And although she wasn't in a camp, she did suffer a lot.
So, Vivien, can you share with us why you decided to tell your mother's story in a kind of novel format, which I think is great, because it's a way of increasing the readership, and some other people that wouldn't necessarily be interested in the Holocaust reading it, like Martin Gilbert's book on the Holocaust, big factual books, can actually hear about a story but set in a novel format.
Well, when I was growing up, my mother told me facts about what happened, but I couldn't, I didn't feel in any way that I wanted to betray her, because she said to me, please, please, never, ever tell anyone about what I'm telling you. And I think that was because she was frightened of being discovered, in inverted commas. I think she spent her formative years being chased and persecuted, and that never left her. And so I didn't want to betray her in that way and give names and places. And so I decided it would be better if I put it into a novel, and then I could write about what happened, but it would be under the guise of a character who represented my mother, as opposed to her herself, if you see what I mean.
Wonderful. Can you just share with us about your mother, her story? Where did it all begin? Because I think it's important to put this in kind of its historical context, which is so important.
Well, she was born in Poland, in Warsaw, and at the age of 2.5, her family left Warsaw because there was a growing anti-Semitism in Poland. And they went to live in Antwerp, in Belgium. They lived there very happily because there was a growing Jewish community there. and my grandfather settled into life as a tailor. And gradually time passed, and the mention of Hitler's army invaded Antwerp, and of course the Jews were persecuted once again. The special thing about my grandfather was he was a nonconformist, and it helped them because he refused to sign any paper saying that they were Jewish, and they also were forbidden to wear the yellow star which the Jews were supposed to wear to identify them as being Jewish. My grandfather said no. So they lived for a while safely until they realized things were getting more difficult. And my mother didn't look Jewish, so she used to go out and get food for them. And however, eventually they had to move, and they were hidden by people, not Jewish people, they were hidden by Gentile people, and moved to different places. But things got so bad that they decided that they would move to France.
Can I just ask you what historical context this is in? So in May of 1940, the Nazis invaded Belgium, they took over Holland, and of course we got our story about Dunkirk. Was it during that time that they fled to France, when France, Belgium, the Netherlands was all under occupation by the Nazis? So they would have had to travel through Nazi checkpoints to get to France.
They did, yes, they did. They did. I don't know the exact details. I can't be specific about what dates they went, because my mother didn't give me any dates, and I don't want to make them up. What she gave me was that they invaded in 1940, and sometime later they moved to France. But they did have to go through checkpoints, and there was one point where they were stopped. They were hidden in a van underneath the floorboards of the van, and that was covered with hay. And they were stopped and checked, and they weren't discovered.
Amazing.
And which was a miracle. And they continued and ended up in France. I think they thought France was safer simply because they were in the countryside and they were in a farm. Even though France was occupied by the Nazis, they hid in a farmhouse, and they felt that was safer than being in Antwerp, where it was much more obvious. And so they lived in the barn in France for quite a number of months, as far as I can remember. And my grandfather was very altruistic, and I think my mother inherited that from him, because she told me that she begged him to let her join this youth movement in France, which was part of the French resistance. And so she trained with them, and they helped her to take these children from France to Switzerland through the woods.
Amazing, absolutely incredible. So if I take a couple of steps back, so interesting, because I read your interview in the Mail on Sunday, which was really good, but also talks about how the fact that your mother was approached by a German officer that tried to flirt with her. And to actually think, and also the thinking of your grandparents was so astute and had the wits about them to realize that the only way they're going to survive was to keep moving, don't stay in one place for much longer. Was that the indicator that they had to move again, the danger of being discovered, the danger of being caught, and the consequences of such?
Yes, I think it was. I think we can think of other very famous family that hid in Amsterdam. They stayed in one place, and eventually they were discovered, and eventually they went to the camps, and that was very unfortunate. But my mother and her family did move around a lot. After they were in France, they did towards the end of the war, they moved back to Brussels. They moved to Brussels, and they lived opposite the Gestapo headquarters.
Oh, I've seen the Gestapo headquarters in Brussels. It's deep in the forest, just outside Brussels.
It's a cinema. It was opposite there, and they thought it would be safe there, and it was for a while. But my mother told me the story of when there was the knock on the door with the German soldiers and the dogs barking, and there was a fire escape in the back of the building, which they all ran down because the German officers were trying to get in the house. They didn't go round the back. I thought it was another miracle. And they ran down the fire escape, and they hid in a nearby bakery. And so they were saved yet again. And this leads me to, to say something else, which is that my mother could never understand why she survived. She didn't understand why so many people had been killed in the camps and in other ways. But why did she survive? And that's what she often said to me. Why was I saved? And I said, did you ever lose your faith? And she said, no. Which is incredible, isn't it? She never lost her faith. She always maintained her belief throughout her life, even though she'd suffered so much, which is an amazing thing. But the guilt never, ever left her.
And can we talk about your mother, Sabine, joining the French resistance? I've interviewed so many Holocaust survivors, and it's been the privilege of my life to do so, to actually tell their stories, get them on record. But your mother's is the first story I've heard where she didn't think about her own personal safety or that of her parents, but actually wanted to rescue Jewish children and get them out of France into what was at the time a neutral Switzerland, on probably very dangerous routes to go through and travel through France, and to bring them to safety. So just share with us something about your mother's character that wanted to help these Jewish children escape from Nazi-occupied France, because it's just extraordinary.
I think that my mother's character was inherited from her father. And I think that before the war, he used to bring people in from the road if they were hungry and feed them, give them a meal. And my mother was brought up with this type of attitude, and I think she was the same. And when they were in France, she said, I can't just be here hiding. I've got to do something. I've got to do something. So she begged her parents to let her join. So she wanted to help others. Her parents wanted her to, when they arrived in Switzerland, to be taken into Switzerland, and that would save her life. So they agreed because they thought she would be, but she was just a bit too old. So when she got there, she couldn't stay. She had to return. I think what she said was the worst part of it was the weather. It was so cold, and that these children, she had to keep them buoyant. She had to keep them cheerful. But I think her character has always been to help others before she helped herself. Always. And she taught us to be like that, but she was very altruistic, very much so.
Amazing. And can you share with us how many children she saved? Do
I
you
don't
any
know the exact number. I think she did a number of journeys. So I don't know the exact number. She never said, and I don't want to guess. So I think there were a good number. That's all I can say.
I mean, that's extraordinary, because if she saved a handful, I don't know, maybe we're talking about 10, 15, 20, maybe more. But if you actually think of those children who, because of her actions, survived the Holocaust,
Yes.
went to go and have families, get married, have families of their own, how many are now alive because of your mother's actions? And maybe that is the actual answer of why she survived the Holocaust, to help others survive. Which is extraordinary.
Yes, I think I would say that's a very good point you've just made, Simon. A very, very good point. That to help others is why she survived. Yeah.
And can you share with us what happened at the end of the war? Was she in Switzerland? Did she escape to Switzerland, or did she remain in France during the occupation?
At the end of the war, they returned to Antwerp. But my mother spoke a number of languages, and she eventually went to become a translator at the Nuremberg trials. And again, she told me don't tell anyone, as though she'd done something wrong. You know, she just didn't want anyone to know what she'd been doing. And she did tell me the story of when she went into the ladies' toilets, and there was two women who'd been cleaning there, and they were talking to each other, and she understood what they were saying, and they had been in the camps as I don't know what the word is, I've forgotten, the women who helped the Germans.
Oh yeah, collaborators. Yeah.
I don't mean that they'd been prisoners. They were actually, not the commandants, but the female commandants in the camps.
Yeah, no. I mean, that must have been heartbreaking for her. But how did she, after the war, how did she end up being in Liverpool? How did she meet your father? And how did they build a new life for themselves in this country after a very turbulent but also very dramatic war in France?
My mother had spent some time in London, and before the war, her father's brother went to live in London, and she went to stay with them. And she met my father in London, and he was a doctor in Liverpool, and his practice was in Liverpool. So when they got married, she came to Liverpool, and yes, and then they had me and the rest of the family.
Wonderful. It's just an amazing story. And Vivien, can you just share with us about your book, Bound by the Scars We Share? What I know it's about your mother and her incredible and dramatic story, but also one I think really needs to be told. Can you just share with us the impact that this novel has had, and what impact did it have on you actually writing it?
The impact it had on me writing it was extremely cathartic, extremely. Since my mother died, I have regretted not talking to her more about her life, and only having the fragments. And so when I wrote about her, obviously I put my whole heart into it, and therefore it was very, very cathartic. The novel is about the lives of two women, one of them being based on my mother, and the other character in the novel is from my imagination, but probably based on people I've met and people I've known. And I wanted to show the courage that women have when they are suffering persecution, whether it's on a personal level or a more than personal level. And so I made these women strong and courageous and brave, because people who are repressed or suppressed suffer. And I wanted to, in my novel, to show that these women battled against that suffering. Yeah.
And your novel is in Yad Vashem, the
It's in
International
Yad
Holocaust.
Vashem. My novel is in Yad Vashem, yes, which is just absolutely. It's in Yad Vashem. It's in many Holocaust museums in globally, in America and Australia and Hong Kong and England. But the fact that it's in Yad Vashem is incredible for me, because they've written to me saying that it is a fantastic testimony to my mother's life and that her memory would be there for posterity. And when I got that letter, I was so moved, because when I visited Yad Vashem myself, I couldn't stop crying. And I thought to myself, well, why am I so upset? And then I looked around me and said, this is why I'm so upset. But at the same time, I wanted my mother to be part of that memory that Yad Vashem communicates. And so I knew that one day I'd do something when I went, and that letter means everything to me.
Amazing. And how do we go about making your novel into a film? And I think it'd make a great feature film, because it not only tells the story of the Holocaust and the horrors of the Holocaust and fleeing the Nazis, but then to turn it into a rescue mission for Jewish children and to get them over the border in Switzerland. It's just incredible.
It would be exciting.
And I think it would make a really, really good film. So we need to get in touch with some Hollywood script writers and some directors to put the idea of this film together. But what, I mean, we have a problem, don't we, in terms of Holocaust education? On the one hand, we have so many films about the Holocaust. We have so many books like yours written. We have documentaries. We have International Holocaust Memorial Day in this country and around the world on the 27th of January each year, the day that the Red Army liberated Auschwitz-Birkenau. But also we have interviews with survivors as well, documentaries. And yet, despite the Holocaust education that's around us, today we're seeing a huge rise in Jew hatred, and in the latest report put out by the Community Security Trust that monitors anti-Semitism in this country, their latest report said the highest spike was amongst school children and teenagers in actually giving anti-Semitic abuse to Jewish children, attacking them and giving them abuse, and also online. How do we combat this hatred of Jew hatred and also keep the memory of the Holocaust alive? Because, if we don't, then we're in danger of repeating it again.
I don't know is the answer. I don't know why people hate Jewish people, but they do. And the one thing that I think is very important is to go into schools and talk to them face to face. I think that's the best thing that can be done, because I did go into schools, and one particular school I went to, I thought when they came in, they looked pretty aggressive, the children, and I thought, well, maybe this won't work. But they were incredible, absolutely incredible. And after I'd told them about my mother and everything, they asked so many questions. I just found that fantastic and genuinely wanted to know. And children came up to me at the end of my talk and just said to me, Miss, I'm so, so sorry what happened to your mother. I'm so, so sorry. And to me, if people can communicate that to children, we may be going on small steps to combating the anti-Semitism that exists, but I don't know the answer to stopping anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I think even the best minds around can't answer that question because it's not rational. If you consider what the Jewish people have given us, they've given us the, given us the Bible, given us our Western civilization, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our values, our morality, given us God, actually, and also all the breakthroughs in science, technology over the centuries. I mean, the contribution made by your very, very small community is huge, and you only have to look at Israel's innovation and how Israel's a light of the nation to realize that. But what role, Vivien, can Christians play in keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive, in standing up against Jew hatred and supporting the Jewish community, and also standing up for the truth of the righteousness of Israel's cause?
I think the educational programs that you're doing are amazing. And I think that in those terms, I think supporting the Jewish community, both globally and in Israel, is an incredible thing to do, to realize that Jews are human beings and that they aren't monsters, and they're not people that think only about money and all the traditional horrible things that people say about Jews. But I do think that charities like yours and the programs that you produce are the way forward, definitely.
Wonderful. We've got about 10 minutes of the program left, so just open the platform to any of you viewers watching this live Jerusalem Dispatch event. And if you have any questions for Vivien, please feel free to write in the box and I'll read them out. I suppose the next question I have to ask you is, how do we tell your mother's story? And isn't it time that your mother actually received a kind of reward and recognition for actually saving Jewish children during the Holocaust, when she could have chosen the easy life and stayed in the farm and been safe with her parents, your grandparents?
I don't know. I think she obviously wouldn't want an award. She definitely wouldn't want an award. That would, if she was alive today, she would say, no, I don't want any award. That's for sure. She'd want to keep it private and secret, and that's what she did, but that's enough. I honestly don't believe that she would want an award, despite the fact that I think she deserves one. I just think my family are very, very proud of my mother. And she didn't have an easy life, and her life was affected by the what she'd been through in the war, and I think that's the sad part, really. And I think it is for all Holocaust victims, that even though they may put on brave faces, inwardly, inside, you can't forget what happened.
My final question to you, Vivien, what would you say is the legacy of your mother? Because you're telling a story so articulately and so well. You've got a novel about her exploits and an incredible story. What would you say her legacy is?
Her legacy is her bravery and her courage and her caring and her compassion and her humor, for sure. But the fact that she was brave all her life, during the war and afterwards, and battled with the guilt. I think her legacy is that the people that have survived, the people that she did save, are alive, hopefully, or
Amazing.
lived a life.
Vivien, can I just say it's an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to interview you about your mother's incredible
Thank you,
life and
Simon.
her
Thank
legacy.
you.
Very much enjoyed it, and I think this is a story that needs to be told so much more. So I can't wait for the film to come out. But I'm just going to pass you over to Dr. David Elms to sum up and give a summary of what we've heard tonight. So over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yes, Vivien, I wonder, I'm going to put you on the spot, but do you have one of your poems available?
There's one at the beginning of the book.
Okay, could you read it out?
If I'd have had one, if I'd have known, I'd have brought some others, but this one at the beginning of the book is, good fortune is a fleeting breeze, flight and fidgety as a child. It makes you calm and feel at ease, but its gentle touch soon leaves you behind. Alas, sorrow clings and hold on tight, and does not seem to want to depart. The feeling stays like an endless night and remains there like a dagger through your heart. And then there's just another one I'll read quickly. A woman's strength comes from within. Her intuition is bold and her love is fervent. The strength of a woman's sadness ripples like her happiness. Her strength is gentle yet mighty, ethereal and realistic. A woman with strength in her soul is a blessing.
Wonderful. Very moving. And again, I think Simon was going to say, how can people get hold of your book? You know,
okay. Well, definitely on Amazon. Any online bookstore, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, Book Depository. If they Google my name or Bound by the Scars We Share, they can get my book online at any store, really. There's a whole list of them, but particularly Amazon.
Okay, well thank you.
Thank you.
I just, we've all been very moved tonight with this story, and it's quite interesting today, and Simon and indeed ICEJ don't know about this, but earlier today, my colleague and I, we were talking with Rafi Bloom, who heads up, he's a leading member in the Manchester and I think UK Jewish community. And he has a number of Holocaust survivors that he knows. And these dear ones, they're still able to go into schools or colleges or indeed wherever they are invited to.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is something as Christians, we were talking about how we could do a united meeting.
Yes.
And so it's interesting what you said earlier on about going into that school. And for me, seeing as well in January at that Holocaust service, there was a school, wasn't there, that was very...
Alsop High, yes, a very good school. Yes, they did and King David from Liverpool. They both did very, very well.
And I believe in years 9 and 10, I mean, it is part of the curriculum, isn't it, to have Holocaust studies?
Yes, they do.
So indeed, if we can get a foothold in there, and maybe as this goes much further than even tonight as well, others can contact us within ICEJ UK, and let's see if we can further this. But it's been a very inspiring, motivating, and must be an emotional experience for you. But thank you very much, Vivien.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for inviting me on. Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, back to Simon.
Yeah, I think we're coming to the end of tonight's Jerusalem Dispatch Live, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have Vivien as our special guest for this month to share her mother's remarkable story of not only surviving the Holocaust, but actually rescuing Jewish children and not thinking of herself, but thinking of the children and getting them to safety. So we don't know the impact that she's made in the lives of these Jewish children and how they've grown up to get married and have children of their own, and probably grandchildren, great-grandchildren now. So thanks to Vivien's brave and courageous mother, they're alive today. But we also have the opportunity then to read her book as well. So I encourage you to buy her book, find out about the story for yourself and tell others. And it makes also for a great present to give people, because people love to read novels. So it's always a good present as well. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us on tonight's Jerusalem Dispatch Live. And if we remember anything, it's remember to show love and appreciation for the Jewish people, for everything that they've given us, because without them, we would not have our faith. We would not have the word of God. We wouldn't even have our own Messiah, Jesus Christ. But I prefer his Hebrew name, which is Yeshua HaMashiach. And so we are so grateful to the Jewish people, and we can show that gratefulness by standing with them and fighting against Jew hatred, which is, like I said earlier, completely irrational. And only by showing the Jewish people the love and the support they need, then we can start to combat the evil that is anti-Semitism. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and pray that you'd have a good evening. And thank you for being with us. So shalom, and God bless from us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.